I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume. So I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. So continuing Alma again, we are reading in our famous war chapters. We're going to be skipping around a bit because of this, as we have the Eastern Theater of War and the Western Theater of War. In the 26th year, Amalickiah had come up on the eastern side, taking several cities, stopped by Teancum, who was able to assassinate Amalickiah in his sleep. Amalickiah's brother, Ammoron, then becomes king. He leaves armies in the cities they've taken, goes down south, and then back up the west, taking a few cities there, splitting the war into two theaters. Helaman has joined them in the west. They have been able to defeat the most powerful of the Lamanite armies in the west, while in the east they are still preparing and getting ready to go out against the Lamanites. That's where we left off. Picking this up, this will be in chapter 52. We've already read two other videos in this chapter, so this video is going to be verses 19 to 40. We're going to finish out the chapter. And in the commencement of the 28th year, Moroni and Teancum and many of the chief captains held a council of war, what they should do to cause the Lamanites to come out against them to battle, or that they might by some means flatter them out of their strongholds, that they might gain advantage over them and take again the city of Mulek. And it came to pass they sent embassies to the army of the Lamanites which protected the city of Mulek, to their leader, whose name was Jacob, desiring him that he would come out with his armies to meet them upon the plains between the two cities. But behold, Jacob, who was a Zoramite, would not come out with his armies to meet them upon the plains. And it came to pass that Moroni, having no hopes of meeting them on fair grounds, therefore he resolved upon a plan that he might decoy the Lamanites out of their strongholds. Therefore he caused that Teancum should take a small number of men and march down near the seashore. And Moroni and his army by night marched in the wilderness on the west of the city Mulek. And thus on the morrow, when the guards of the Lamanites had discovered Teancum, they ran and told it unto Jacob their leader. And it came to pass that the armies of the Lamanites did march forth against Teancum, supposing by their numbers to overpower Teancum, because of the smallness of his numbers. And as Teancum saw the armies of the Lamanites coming out against him, he began to retreat down by the seashore northward. And it came to pass that when the Lamanites saw that he began to flee, they took courage and pursued them with vigor. And while Teancum was thus leading away the Lamanites who were pursuing them in vain, behold, Moroni commanded that a part of his army who were with him should march forth into the city and take possession of it. And thus they did, and slew all those who had been left to protect the city, yea, all those who would not yield up their weapons of war. And thus Moroni had obtained possession of the city Mulek, with a part of his army, while he marched with the remainder to meet the Lamanites when they should return from the pursuit of Teancum. And it came to pass that the Lamanites did pursue Teancum until they came near the city Bountiful. And then they were met by Lehi and a small army which had been left to protect the city Bountiful. And now behold, when the chief captains of the Lamanites had beheld Lehi with his army coming against them, they fled in much confusion, lest perhaps they should not obtain the city Mulek before Lehi should overtake them. For they were wearied because of their march, and the men of Lehi were fresh. Now the Lamanites did not know that Moroni had been in their rear with his army, and all they feared was Lehi and his men. Now Lehi was not desirous to overtake them till they should meet Moroni and his army. And it came to pass that before the Lamanites had retreated far, they were surrounded by the Nephites, by the men of Moroni on one hand, and the men of Lehi on the other, all of whom were fresh and full of strength. But the Lamanites were wearied because of their long march, and Moroni commanded his men that they should fall upon them until they had given up their weapons of war. And it came to pass that Jacob, being their leader, being also a Zoramite, and having an unconquerable spirit, he led the Lamanites forth to battle with exceeding fury against Moroni. Moroni being in their course of march, therefore Jacob was determined to slay them and cut his way through to the city of Mulek. But behold, Moroni and his men were more powerful, therefore they did not give way before the Lamanites. And it came to pass that they fought on both hands with exceeding fury, and there were many slain on both sides, yea, and Moroni was wounded, and Jacob was killed. And Lehi pressed upon their rear with such fury with his strong men, that the Lamanites in the rear delivered up their weapons of war, and the remainder of them, being much confused, knew not whither to go or to strike. Now Moroni, seeing their confusion, he said unto them, If ye will bring forth your weapons of war, and deliver them up, behold, We will forbear shedding your blood. And it came to pass that when the Lamanites had heard these words, their chief captains, all those who were not slain, came forth and threw down their weapons of war at the feet of Moroni, and also commanded their men that they should do the same. But behold, there were many that would not, and those who would not deliver up their swords were taken and bound, and their weapons of war were taken from them, and they were compelled to march with their brethren forth into the land bountiful. And now the number of prisoners who were taken exceeded more than the number of those who had been slain, yea, more than those who had been slain on both sides. Moroni is somewhat of a military genius. This seems like a very simple thing as we're reading it, but it actually is a very ingenious maneuver here. Notice first that all of these men are in on it. They all know the plan. This is a plan that involves Moroni's army, Teancum's army, and Lehi's army. So Moroni hides himself out west, just west of the city of Mulek. Mulek must have been somewhat in the north, because the next city up is Bountiful, which is the farthest north. So Mulek's fairly far north. He hides himself in the west. Teancum takes his small army along the seashore. And it's a small army so that the Lamanites think that they can overpower it with ease. He then, when he sees the Lamanites coming, flees up to Bountiful, where Lehi is waiting. See, Lehi wasn't just sitting there and, oh, here comes Teancum, we better go help him. No, he's waiting. And when he sees Teancum's army coming, he sends his men out in the two switch places. Teancum's men are tired. They're not actually part of the battle. They've been in a forced march fleeing from the Lamanites. That's why the Lamanites are weary, because they've been chasing Teancum in a forced march, and they've been doing their own forced march to keep up with him. And when they get close to the city Bountiful, here comes Lehi, prepared to defend Teancum. So Lehi comes out of the city, Teancum goes into the city, and Lehi's fresh troops start chasing the Lamanites. The Lamanites are already tired. They say, well, we got to get back to our own stronghold, and they turn around. Now, why was Moroni's army not tired out if they're chasing the Lamanites? Because they weren't chasing them. They were going at a normal pace, waiting for the Lamanites to come back. And that's what happens. The Lamanites turn around, they charge back. Moroni's troops are nice and fresh. They've not been a forced march. They're just casually strolling up there, waiting for the Lamanites to come back. As they come in, Jacob leads the army of the Lamanites. And he sees Moroni coming, and his idea is, spearhead, charge through, as many of us as can get there, we'll get back to the city and we'll be safe. Of course, they don't know that Mulek's already been taken by another portion of Moroni's army, but they try to spearhead through Moroni's army. Moroni's army stops them, and Jacob is killed. While they're fighting Moroni, Lehi shows up, and as soon as Lehi shows up, there's not even any fighting. The Lamanites just throw down their weapons and surrender. That portion of the army, because this is a large army, so the ones in the back that see Lehi coming, they surrender immediately upon seeing Moroni, as being Lehi. Moroni, seeing what's going on, says, look, if you guys surrender, we'll spare your lives, we're all good. Some of them do, some of them don't. But even those who don't willingly throw down their arms, we're told that Moroni doesn't kill them. He forcibly disarms them, he puts them in, he binds them as prisoners, and sends them to Bountiful to be kept in prison. We see that Moroni is a very compassionate, very merciful man. He doesn't want to kill anybody. But the whole strategy is just wonderful. So this is how they take back the city of Mulek, and this is in the 28th year. We will be reading a small portion of chapter 53 next, and then moving back to the story of Helaman. So I will see you there.